Hey there, this is Jen T. Grace, founder of Publish Your Purpose, and I am here for a book launch conversation with Sandra. Welcome, Sandra. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic, and I love that we're here to celebrate and launch your book, Just Keep Moving. So, can we just dive right in and have you share a little bit about who you are before I start asking you book questions?
Yes. I have been in marketing for quite some time and mostly in hospitality, basically focusing on travel and doing content writing. I'm currently changed careers when I turned 50 and began to set up a nonprofit for women doing marketing kits for women that maybe found themselves in a situation that they needed to go back to work and didn't have the skills or know-how of how to market themselves, whether that be through websites or through content and things like that. So I've been dedicating myself to that along with other marketing endeavors and finishing my book.
I love that. How long ago was this book idea versus now it being out in the world for others?
It started 3 years ago,
Hmm.
and it started through when I decided to change careers. I took a class, an online class on writing, and it just so happened to be a screenwriter's class.
Mhm.
And I started, with the idea of the book of a memoir, and it was it just kind of it was strange because I didn't plan it out to be a story about myself, but it ended up being that way. And in during the class, I got a lot of really good feedback, and then I just kept writing until
Mhm.
I did the entire thing. But it was definitely something that came out of impromptu.
Yeah, yeah, which is so cool though, too, to think about like just kind of exploring new options and you land in this class and now 3 years later you have this awesome book that is designed to help people. So for the full title, so it's Just Keep Moving, Breaking the Silence While Changing Directions from Despair to Happiness. So
Right.
can you give us kind of a synopsis of what your book is about?
Yeah. So the book is basically my life story. Um, Came to this country when I was 3 years old with my family, and it just tells a story of a lot of despair and a lot of just bad situations that happened to this family. And I tell the story in a third person because the entire time when I was growing up and as a child, I always saw myself as a third person. It was like that was my way of disassociating with everything that was going on. There was a lot of abuse. And so throughout my entire childhood, I would always be, move forward or survive by thinking, well, that's happening to somebody else. What can I do to make things different? Which
Mhm.
is basically why I came up with the title. Um, and then, slowly but surely, I was able to get out of the situations that I was in. And I always did a lot of self work in myself because I didn't want to repeat cycles.
Mm.
And now I found myself, many years later and a lot of work later, but actually feeling happy and very fulfilled despite my past.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's so much of that kind of triumph, right? Of overcoming and getting like being resilient too. I think is such a big piece of this. I know that so much of what your goal is to kind of empower others. Can you kind of I just maybe speak to that a little bit, like just because I think it there's a certain quality to someone who says, all right, I went through all of these things and I want to share the story to actually be able to help others and empower others. So, where, I guess, where along the lines did that kind of come up for you, where you were like, you know what, I know that there's something here with my story that's going to resonate with other people. I want to make sure that that goal is achieved.
Yeah, I think for me, it was, like I said, I came to this point in my life and I wanted to change careers. And I
Mhm.
always had a sense of, I was kind of confused of the present and the past. So even though I worked a lot on improving my situation in the past, or as far as mental health, that in my present situation, a lot of things were happening, but I wasn't recognizing it because I was thinking it was something that was happening from the past that kept coming up.
Mm,
And I think it wasn't until I started writing the book that I realized that yes, my past was my past, but I was actually reliving a lot of the stuff in my current situation that I kept putting off. And
mhm,
so it was writing the book was very complicated for me because even after I wrote it, I still dwelled on should I publish it or not, just
mm,
because I was always very private and I was embarrassed. I was, embarrassed of the things that happened to me, even though I didn't cause them.
mhm,
And it wasn't until one day that I was sitting and I was talking to my daughter, and we're talking about things that happened, and I realized that I could help other people by telling my story, because
mm,
when someone tells you their story, they're like, oh, well, that happened to me too. And it validates people, and it makes them feel like the things that happened to them were not something that they imagined. It was reality, and it's valid.
mhm.
So that is the main goal for my book, is just to help people validate themselves and
Yeah.
to know that they're not alone, and that at the end of the day, you can be happy despite everything that happens.
I love that so much. I know that there is a theme of water kind of that carries from the very beginning of the book all the way through it. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I know it's meaningful.
Yeah, so it was very interesting because I was actually at the beginning of the book, there's a mention of a situation with water before I was even born. And then throughout the book, there's a lot of situations with water. And I didn't really find out what the relevance of that was until later.
Mm,
And it's very interesting because something that happened to me at birth with with the water stayed with me subconsciously, and
mm,
that's like really strong because it just shows us that we think that we forget about stuff, but we don't. It stays in the back of our head, and it kept repeating itself over and over. And it really wasn't until I wrote the book that I realized that there was a pattern there, that the water was pulling me in. And it was just part of my therapy of having to deal with my situation as a child.
mm,
So it was writing the book was really interesting because it was very therapeutical, and it was like having a bunch of puzzle pieces, and I was able to put it back together
mhm.
and realize why I did the things that I did, or why I had the fears that I had, such as my fear of water.
Yeah. That's what I always find really interesting. And I had this experience personally when I wrote my memoir too, is that there's something so therapeutic about just getting it out there. And there's the therapeutic side of just telling the story. But I think the more valuable thing, which you're touching on, is the connections that you're starting to see, and you're able to kind of, it's like a connect the dots where you're like, oh wow, that's happening because of this. But how often do we sit and actually reflect on our lives in like a totality? Like we rarely do that. So it sounds like it was really powerful for you to be able to connect those dots too, of things that you knew but didn't really know, right?
Right. It was definitely it's a gift, and even if I wouldn't have published the book,
Mhm.
um, I think that I would have gotten a big benefit out of it, but I didn't want to be selfish.
Mm,
It is hard because people who read the book are going to know everything there is to know about me.
mhm,
And I was very scared of being judged. But
mm,
one thing that I learned was that my fear, I always thought I was shy, but in reality, it was just I have a big ego, which is
mm.
really ironic when you think that you're shy. And and then when I dropped the ego, I realized that it didn't matter if people did judge me or what they
Mhm.
said about me, as long as I could help other people.
Yeah.
So that just gives me, it gives me a purpose. I always knew when I was growing up, I would think to myself, there has to be more to life than just existing.
Mhm.
And this is kind of a mission that I'm on. It's that I want to reach out to people that are in pain, or that have really bad feelings about the way they grew up or the way they were treated, that they can, become less angry, happier people that really resonate in this world and help others, that you don't have to be stuck your whole life in that pattern.
Yeah. And I know that you wrote it and kind of intend it to be somewhat of an educational tool for those who are reading it too. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I find that, it's not always easy to find that balance of being able to share our story and it being a resource at the same time. And it feels like you really struck that balance well. So I'm curious if you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so for that part, I had to be very self-critical.
Mhm.
So I had to be really raw. So it wasn't just telling stories about other people in my life. It was also like almost like telling on myself.
Mhm.
Like about things that I did or situations that I got myself into. And at the same time, it was like saying, well, this is how I dealt with it, or this is how you can deal with it, in other words, or
Mhm.
even, as far as like parenting or repeating cycles, it's kind of like teaching people that you can break cycles and how you can do it, or just really also honing in on mental health.
Mhm.
And, people say, I don't need therapy, but I think we all need therapy,
Mhm.
and it helps us to be able to process on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. And I know, kind of tying into it being, an educational resource, and you also kind of stated this at the top of when you were kind of looking to see what other things can you be doing. I know that a portion of the proceeds of this book are going toward helping others. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because it's just something that I find so inspiring and wish more authors did.
Yeah, well, the when I looked at my whole situation, I was like, well, the book, again, I didn't write the book to make money. I think everybody who writes books knows that you don't make money writing books. But I wanted any profits that I had to go to this nonprofit that I started, because
Mhm.
I really do. My purpose for writing it was to help, and so I can only give back to that, giving any kind of proceeds from the book. And it's just basically because I feel that there's been a lot of people in my life that have helped me and I just want to pay it back.
Mhm.
And I also want to see people becoming healthier, better, individuals, because I can't change the world, but I can change a little bit of my community around me, and hopefully it'll spread out. And especially for young women, I feel there's a lot of young teenagers, women that just feel kind of lost in the society that we're in right now,
Mhm.
and that they need some type of inspiration. And
Mhm.
so anything I can do to give back and help them, then I want to do that.
Yeah. I love that. I love the acknowledgement that, books on independent on their own are not necessarily the money makers, but that there's so much bigger of a purpose and desire to help others, and for the fact that the money that is raised from your book can go toward your nonprofit, which I think is just so fantastic. Can you share a little, like, the name of the nonprofit, how people can find it, all of those details?
Yeah, it's called Pen Paper Grow Women. So Pen Paper Grow is the name of my marketing company. So
Mhm.
from there, I just took it Pen Paper Grow Women. And the reason why I called it Pen Paper Grow is because for me, it was very therapeutical to put pen to paper and write. And that's what helps me grow.
Mhm.
It helped me grow in a professional manner, and it also helps me grow um, in an individual, as a person.
Mhm.
So I feel like the more people write, the better off they are, because there's something that happens in your brain when you're writing, that
Mhm.
you're able to process things a lot better. And that's one of the things I've been trying to do is go out and talk to people and kids in schools, and
Mhm.
just kind of educate them on not losing that part of yourself to be able to write, because we spend a lot of time typing and texting,
Mhm.
and we should focus also on writing as a tool for getting out things that are stressing us or bothering us.
Mhm.
So that was part of the history behind the name.
Yeah, that's so good. And can they get to it from your main website, thepenpapergrow.com? Can they get to the
Yes.
nonprofit too?
Yes, from my so my website's sandrabeltran.com, so my full name.com.
Mhm.
And from there you can get to the nonprofit.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So you briefly touched upon this. I wanted to ask in more detail. So if anyone is watching and they have some kind of connection to you or connection for you, is that you've definitely made it a priority to be out there talking to people, either individual or small groups, and speaking and things like that. Can you share just like maybe a little more detail on what that looks like? Because I feel like, you never know who might know who would be you'd be a perfect speaker to come in and kind of have a conversation with their particular group.
Right. So basically is I, try and focus on small groups of like, you know, I think people like kids in high school or women's groups, um, anybody that I can help by telling my story and telling them how I was able to overcome a lot of the situations that I was faced with.
Mhm.
And so I'm, available to do any kind of educational speaking or motivational speaking for them. And just having them, ask me questions or, share my stories with them. Sometimes I find that sharing my story kind of brings up other things for them and they ask me questions and then they can tell their story. And sometimes it's more about listening than talking, and
Yeah.
just letting people know that they have an outlet and giving them tools. That's the whole thing. I feel like we need to have tools to be able to deal with the things that we've had to face in our, whether it's childhood or even adulthood, and being able to process that and become a better person.
Yeah, that's so impactful. I love that so much. And I feel like there's so many benefits of telling stories, but I think one of the beautiful things about putting your story into a book is that you do have that ability for someone who sees themselves reflected in you as the author and see, wow, if she was able to do whatever this thing is, then I can do that too. And I think that's the power that books and being an author have across the board. And I love that that's kind of like intentionally woven into what you're trying to do with all of this, which is amazing.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times we don't even realize why we're sad or
Mhm.
why, we have a feeling that comes over us. In the book, I do deal a lot with, people feeling about me personally feeling suicidal
Mhm.
and not even knowing it. It was just like when I go back to the water, I was constantly in a situation where I've almost drowned 3 or 4 times in my entire life.
Mhm.
And there was always that question, was it on purpose or was
Mhm.
it, an accident? And so, people get really down and then just for a split second think of, taking their own lives. And
Yeah.
it's just almost like putting it out there like it's just a bad moment, but you can get through it and you can come
Mhm.
out on the other side a better person for it and
Yeah.
stronger. And so that I think is very important. And it's something that I see with a lot of young people that have, you know, ill feelings towards themselves for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And it's just the bottom line is just temporary. And
Mhm.
there's so many other good things that are
Mhm.
out there for you.
Yeah. And just keep moving is a perfect title for that whole kind of mindset of just keep moving. Yeah.
Right. And it's basically like, if you don't like how things are going for you, well then change directions, because at the end of the day, we are all in control of our destiny.
Mhm.
And we don't have to stay in situations if, it's just change directions, change what you're doing. You can't expect change if you're still staying in the same place.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what was the origin? I guess kind of like as we conclude here, what was the origin of the title of your book? Since we're kind of talking about that now.
Well, the reason why I put just keep moving is because I was always moving. And, in the book, you'll see I was always, there's a lot of, I'd have really bad feelings about something and then I would just change the direction of what I
Mhm.
was doing. And it was subconscious. And I think that came a lot from that third person feeling like I was an outsider. It was just like almost like in a movie telling that person, hey, do this instead of that. I
Yeah.
just wanted to be able to feel better. So
Mm.
I always felt that if I could just keep moving, then I could come out ahead.
Hmm.
But if I stood still, then things were never going to change for me.
Yeah.
So that was the main reason why I chose the title. And at the end of the day, I feel that I have come out to be a better person. Um, but also, I feel that it's my purpose here to help other people to feel better about themselves and to validate the things that they've gone through.
Yeah. Oh, it's so powerful. And the cover art of your book is adorable too, because it's I don't know how old you are in that picture, but
Uh,
you
well,
have
I have it here. I happen to have a
perfect.
copy.
Yes.
I don't know if you can see it,
Yes.
but yeah. So
So
that
beautiful.
was a picture of myself when I was 3 years old, and that was right before I came to the United States.
Mm,
And it's a very interesting picture because my shoes are torn and tattered. I mean, we were, poor,
mhm,
but my dad came to this country as an immigrant to be a mechanic, and
mhm,
we came to the United States for a better life. But
mhm.
I didn't realize that with a better life came also like a terrorizing, upbringing. So
Mhm.
so it's just kind of ironic that, at the end of the day, you think that, you just don't know where you're going to end up.
Yeah. Yeah. So powerful. I cannot encourage this enough for people to go out and get a copy of your book. And your book is available wherever books are sold. So, if someone wants to go to their favorite local bookstore and order a copy, that would be wonderful. I'm a big fan of supporting independent local bookstores. Bookshop.org is kind of an online independent bookstore, which does a lot of good for bookstores across the board. Obviously, it's also available on Amazon if that is your preference of purchasing there. But all of those places, books are available. And then to contact you directly, they can go to your website, which I do have up on the screen now, so they can
Yes.
contact you there. And if there's any speaking opportunities or any groups of people that would make sense for you to be in front of, they can certainly get in touch with you through your website as well.
Correct.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I'm excited that we're in launch day, which is always fun and exciting, and it makes a great holiday gift. So if anyone would like to purchase it for a holiday gift, I encourage that as well. But thank you for this. I appreciate it so much, and I will talk to you, Sandra, soon. And then for everybody else, I will be back in another book launch interview at some point in the near future.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks.